Um, so thank you very much for the introduction, and it's my second presentation in under 24 hours that I've been here, maybe, or something like that.
Yes.
So I'm still jet lagged. I'm not going to fall asleep, but trying to make it as best as I can. Just one note on the MEI program, that's Master in Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which I think is pretty much the story of my life. There are two types of businesses, I'd like to say. Both of them are flatlines. One is that it's so well established, there's nothing much that can be done. The other one, God forbid, is the other flatline. It means it's dead. And also there, you cannot influence anything. Everything in between is the spike and surges of what happens to us on a daily basis, and that's those challenges that we have. You know, those nights that we don't sleep, why I have so much gray hair on my head, and why in such times when the economy is so challenging in so many countries, in so many areas, we can find ways on how to succeed. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have three parts to this session. The first one's going to be the 3D virtual fit and merchandising. I'm going to talk about, you know, what is this 3D thing all about? How companies are using it, in what ways, what does it say for them? How do they communicate? To whom do they send these images? What do they expect from the manufacturer side? The other portion of that will be the continuation of where I kind of left off yesterday, and that's how this whole thing is being used in a broader context. Not only that is being used right now in our industry, but also you'll see how anywhere from TV shows to websites to e-commerce websites, game developers and animations. We're going to use some fun examples. And the last portion of it will be a live case study that I'll introduce right before my time is up. And that'll be a local manufacturer you all know, so I understand, and their relationship with the brand out in New York City and how they were able to achieve some very interesting numbers. I kind of threw it at you yesterday while I was speaking. Today we're actually going to show you the work in progress and how actually they talk to one another and where the numbers are generated from. So engineered prints. Yesterday I was talking about all those guys over at that Eli Tahari brand in New York City, you know, people crawling on the floor, injuring their knees. And for what? For the ability to just being able to visualize engineered prints. In one of the largest, or maybe you can say the second largest denim manufacturer in the US, they're based in Los Angeles, won't mention name. I was recently visiting as part of their request to come in and see what can they improve on their workflow. And they do about over 50 samples just to decide on a colorway. Now this is denim, okay? And you need to wait for 50 samples just to decide on a colorway. What if there was a better way for them to do that? What if there was a digital way for them to do that? What if they could have communicated those 50? What if they can make 70 and just then eliminate 30, 40 out of them just to decide on those few that will make it to the line, that will make it to the market, engage the manufacturer on the other end of the globe and say, you know what, we're much closer to what we wanted. That will allow us to get to the market much faster. Cycle time reduction and global fit are the buzzwords that are hovering all over the place in the United States right now, anywhere from the retailers in Wisconsin and Minneapolis and all the way to the smaller design houses. It's all about cycle time reduction. It's all about global fit. How do I work more intelligently, not only with my own liaison offices when we talk about retailers, like recently we have deployed with Walmart, the OptiTex solutions in about 9 or 11 of their offices around the globe, and how do they actually going to bring it down to the manufacturing level, not endangering the relationship, not compromising the relationship, but enhancing the relationship, meaning more work for the manufacturer who would streamline with the process, meaning coming from you to them, not from them to you. And I think that's the theme of what they want to achieve in this one. You know, back in the days, they were like, work my way, or there is no work. And I think this time around, they say, let's listen to you and see what you, the manufacturer, need, how we can embrace technology in the process and making it much more of an effective and money-making tool for all of us. And I'm saying it in two aspects. One is because I'm seeing what's happening now in the apparel business, and it's very interesting, to see how everyone reacts a little different to this recession. I joked about it yesterday, saying it's my third one. It's my third recession in my life. I can, mark it on my little car. How many times I've been through this. But you see still, that the situation is unclear, even to leaders, whether we're talking about leaders in the U.S., European leaders. We just, hear and read what's going on. Just a bunch of news that came last night is that it's in an inevitable situation of the U.S. economy hitting a second recession. I mean, this is now everyone is saying it. That's what we call the double dip. And you know what, I tend to agree that we're going to get to that step, much like I tend to agree that there's going to be a lot more bad stuff coming out of Europe, which somehow is going to affect us. There's just no other way. You can't avoid that. We're at that step that it's just going to roll down the hill. But it's also going to streamline a lot of things. It's also going to fix a lot of things. Once you know that you've got behind or beyond that problem, say we call it Greece at this point, at least you know that you have the energies to deal with the solution. That's kind of what's happening also in our industry. We're struggling with situations. I'm speaking again from the U.S. side of things. I see how they're saying, I'm sending that package again and again, to my factory in Egypt. I worked with them for like 12 years, and I still get the zipper, like off by quarter of an inch. And I still get the pocket off by 0.1, and I'm talking to them every day, and I'm sending them those faxes and emails, and they just don't get it. I mean, isn't there another language to speak with them? So we kind of help them understand that there's no other language, but there is probably a different dialect, if you will, and that is the language of images. Images, as we know, speaks for 1,000 words, and what you're going to see in this portion of the presentation is more like not only in apparel, but also how other manufacturers in related industries are doing it, like bag manufacturers and so on. So this is not a real bag. This is a virtual bag. There's no mold in it. Okay, it's just the effects of air inside the bag and all the hardware accessories that appear as real hardware pieces, not a visualization of the hardware piece. And we're going to see a little later on another example, another nice example of a bag in the making, a process in the making. Much like we're going to see how a leading European brand has put the virtual next to the real one in the production development point. Now, the nice thing about this is that we're currently deploying with one of the largest sportswear manufacturers on their accessories line. All those bags, bowling leather bags, all the pipings are showing as real tangible pieces, much like the accessory, the buckles, the zippers, and everything is not just a visualization, but the actual piece of hardware. Very, very difficult to simulate. When I'm going to use another example altogether from the world of games and movies, two areas that we're working very strong with as a fun portion of our business, not as our main portion of our business, then you'll see that maybe I'll use that statement now. Brad from Pixar always says that it's easier for him to destroy a planet in a movie than to cause one character to grab the shirt of the other one. That's how difficult it is to do 3D simulation. Now, there are all kinds of 3D simulations out there. We're also going to talk about those solutions, and what you should be looking under the hood when you're evaluating the CAD software. So moving on to the line in production. Now, here's how it looks inside a CAD system, the OptiTex CAD system. When we're looking at the left-hand side of it, we can see our assets all the way to the point of stitch per inch, because we also want to know the overall cost of our stitch, not just the fabric, not just the marker. We also want to know if there is a virtual stitch, what's the length of it. On the right-hand side, what we see is a bag which is ready to be flattened. We didn't have this bag before. There was no mold. There was nothing. We just build pattern pieces, and then we mark them as surfaces that can be flattened. In this particular case, we can work in both ways. We can have a mold that was built in a 3D system, brought into the OptiTex, and then flattened, or we can build it from the assets that we have. It's kind of a little dark, so it's difficult to see. At the main side, at the main portion of the screen, But you can work both ways, and that's the beauty of it. Some companies are developing like aircrafts, for example. They build it all on CATIA Pro Engineer. I was just on a cruise a few weeks ago, and one of the movies that they had over there was showing how the ship was built. And there was a blueprint, but it was made out of 3D engineering program called CATIA. The same application that some of our customers in the non-apparel side, like Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Sandia, these are all of the leading U.S., I would call them institutions, businesses, because they're kind of a mix of both, are using for their development, using also the OptiTex solutions at the back-end portion of the CATIA and the Pro Engineer. And this is the ready-made bag. Now, there is always a love and hate relationship between laptops and projectors. Doesn't look like we're going to solve it here, but if you were to look at the image on my screen, then the leather looks like leather. And this is all part of a technology called CGFX, which allows light to collide with the material and project off that material as if it was that specific thing. Leather like leather, denim like denim, cotton like cotton, etc. You actually teach the computer what the material means, not from the properties of the material, which is crucial, of course, to a successful draping, down to the pleats and wrinkles, but also from the feeling in our eyes. If we have time later, I'll zoom in on a denim, and you literally will be able to tell that it's a piece of denim. So this is the bag that we saw in the previous slide as being developed, and all the way to a finish, including all the hardware pieces. Those of you who are familiar with the brand will know who they are. Women, for you guys, it's pretty much what you all have or want to have. But they're the largest in their field. And that's how they do it right now for their merchandising team. What they tell them is, listen, we've been, and I use the word recession again, in this recession we've been doing a lot of these samples that later on we need to dump. In the US we joke and say, it's a sad joke, but we do say that Marshalls and TJ Maxx were created so you, the brands will have a place where you can dump all the stuff that no one want to buy. But what if we can get rid of TJ Maxx and Marshalls? What if we can become much more efficient and streamlined in the way that we work, and then be able to offer our garments not in a situation where, like, I see, on a Sunday afternoon, kids running around in those retail stores in the TJ Maxx and the Marshalls and stepping on pieces of garments that we work so hard to produce. So in a different segment of our business, what we've done was a TV show that I'll talk about later that kind of backs up the fact that there is a lot of science, there's a lot of technology, and there's a lot of respect that should come into the process of manufacturing garments. It's not those sweatshops that you hear about or used to hear about. There are very good people working out there, very hardworking people working out there, and they deserve, and those things that they produce deserve their respect. So let's help you get better and more efficient in what you do. And that's what Tim Gunn, in his show, Tim Gunn's Guide to Style, was actually, I think it's airing now in India, or was airing in India. That's what he was trying to promote, the technology portion behind apparel. So this brand right now is generating tons of virtual images. None of these bags was produced in real life. And the goal is to be able to come to the market with those items that we as consumers would want to buy. A typical case for this company means generating about 100 virtual samples, out of which a line will eventually consist of 15 bags. So you do 100 virtual, out of which you do about 50 in real life, and only 15 make it to the market. Wonderful saving for them. Later on in the last portion of our presentation, we're actually going to show you what does it mean in numbers. It all comes down to that, right? How much dollars are involved in the process. So line planning, one of the ways that you do virtual prototyping is presenting it in various colors and all the way to the artwork. It's very critical to be able to produce the virtual product into using two important components. Component number one is, of course, the body that it goes on. Yesterday I was touching about the ability to bring in body forms, scans of individuals, or there are companies that we work with who want to see the shirt line on the back of a chair, on the back of the chair, just to see how it's going to fall on it, using different materials. Some want to do it over a cloth hanger. It's kind of a simulation that you can use in many creative ways. that generates those pleats or the wrinkles that you're seeing on the shirt. The body that it goes on in conjunction with the material. Now, the material is critical. And OptiTex is kind of very unique in that sense because, there are, as I mentioned before, some 3D solutions out there, but we're the only ones who actually spent over 5 years of studying how fabric will behave in a three-dimensional environment. You can't call your fabric vendor and tell him, hey, how's my stuff going to look in 3D? Because most likely he's going to hang up the phone on you. But there's definitely a way to figure that one out as well, using fabric testing kits. The old methodologies were called Kawabata and Fast, Zero Fast. Zero Fast is still an updated one. Kawabata is the traditional one. Universities out in Hong Kong are actually very much involved in that process up until now. And there is always the ability to upgrade any existing lab that you have with specific tests that are testing the 5 critical elements of what fabric draping is going to look like, and that generates those pleats and wrinkles that you see. Then comes the fun part of doing the whole what if thing of what if I'm going to put different textures and different embroideries and different logos and different buttons and different embellishments and creating the final look and feel of the product, and I didn't even touch the fabric. Just in the previous session, I think Roger was talking about, or Paul was it, the cost of material is 50% from our overall cost. Now, you can imagine what it means every time you touch the fabric. If you were me, that'll put another piece of gray hair on your head. And if there was a way to shorten that or save on the fabric, and that will make our balance sheet much more happier. And that's at the end of the day what it's all about. So this particular case, we chose, those of you who are familiar with this brand, and again, it's a US brand, different colorways, much like we show on the previous slide on line planning. We're looking here at different colorways, the same piece of sportswear jacket, just in different colors, ready to go into any Word document, Excel document, PowerPoint, not only as a JPEG, but also as a full 3-dimensional image. Imagine if you were able to take these 6 samples and put them into a Word document, and whenever you send it to your buyer, you can actually tell them, check the one that you really want, whether it's a colorway, whether it's a different style. And they check whatever they want, and they send you back the file, and they can actually zoom in or rotate on the image, and everything becomes very much more personal. And you don't need to send them stuff. And I used yesterday FedEx as a fun example, mainly because in New York City, those of you that have visited the garment district will know that there are, on any given block, okay, not street, just a block, and there are so many blocks in that particular area, there are 2 UPS trucks, 2 FedEx trucks, and back in the days where DHL was still playing a role in the US, there was also 1 DHL truck. And every other hour comes those big, huge 18-wheeler trucks and unload stuff and load stuff. And that stuff is what we, send back and forth all the time just to get a pocket moved, as I showed yesterday, 1/4 of an inch to the right. So if there is a more intelligent way, definitely this is the better of them all. We're using this new customer of ours as another example of what they wanted to achieve. Logo placement and texture. Now that is a very critical element that happens at the headquarters level, at the retail brand level. That takes a big portion of their daily work, is the ability to deal with artwork, texture. And it's very nice because, when you think about it, if you would like to take, say, the shirt that I'm wearing and get the stripe and plates matched up nicely, you have to actually maybe print the pattern pieces and, make all those adjustments until you're ready and happy. Maybe package it up, ship it to your brand and tell them, guys, what do you think? And if they say good, we do. And if not, we have to do another one. But if you're able to deal with that in a virtual way, then you can actually use the overnight hours to communicate with them, cutting drastically on not only the shipping, but also on the communication, speeding up the process, and making sure that you all kind of on the same page. And it's not like, what did I mean versus what did you do? But it's all like, what did we talk about and what we, as a relationship, were able to achieve. And The artwork happens a lot, as I mentioned, on that side, but it also affects the way that we create our patterns. So for that, there is actually an interface between the pattern and the Illustrator. That's what they normally use for that, Adobe Illustrator. There is a direct link now between our CAD system and Adobe Illustrator. So not only that you're not doing your engineered prints pattern or logo positioning, textures layout on a sketch, you're actually doing it now on their production piece. So, and it shows up on the 2D pattern making of yours. So you can actually see that as you work. And it's really, really, really helping to, you know, bridge the gap and create the communication much smoother between the two sides of the globe. And here is how it looks, you know, when you need to even, from a merchandising communication level, need to communicate that into your, anywhere from Excel, PLM, you know, PLM becomes a very useful tool for a lot of companies. Again, I always like to joke about and say that PLM can be the most expensive typewriter machine you have ever purchased. If all you do is take all your stuff and just type it into the system and hope that the system somehow will spew it nicely and organized on the table. Well, it's not going to do that unless you actually teach the system and implement it properly, which is a process that takes a long time. You can figure out pretty much when the first dollar leaves your pocket. You have no idea when the last one does when you implement PLM. So naturally, these CAD systems, 3D systems, and so on that feed the information onto the PLM, in this example, it's an Excel interface that takes the information from the pattern design system, breaks it down into categories, and even embed a very nice 3D image right next to it. So whenever that Excel makes it to wherever it does, that image, again, remember, can be rotatable. You can double-click on it, and you can actually see what that, whether it was a spec pack information that was communicated or actual production information that was communicated, can be visualized and presented properly. Now, when you talk about PLM systems and virtual prototyping, merchandising, sometimes the recipient of the content has no knowledge of what pattern making is, what technical design is, but they really want to see what that image looks like, because that really helps them to influence whatever design direction their organization is going to go through. So we can add another one word here, which is called XML. And those of you who are familiar with the format of XML, it's wonderful. I mean, API and XMLs are wonderful. You can slice and dice the information however you want, in opposed to just being pushed content of whatever it was pushed your way. So for example, if you talk about the legacy CAD systems out there, their file system, unfortunately for them, maybe fortunately for us, still traces back to the days of non-Windows compliant language, also known as DOS, where the file is actually being placed in the PLM system as a file. You cannot access it, you cannot do much. Asking them, can I interface my files to the PLM system? The answer is yes, of course. Yeah, because it can be a placeholder. My file is in the PLM, but I cannot do much with it because it's not sliceable. With the XML and APIs, or basically with the XML, what you can do is you can actually say, you know what, I'm in merchandising, I really care about this 3D image which is on the screen. I have no need whatsoever for any of this global piece information that is showing up on that center table there. I really don't know what to do with it. I'm not in costing, I'm in merchandising, I really care about the 3D image, so I can attach it to the spec pack that I sent you just yesterday. Well, with XML you can do that. And that's the wonders, that's the beauty of working with more advanced solutions, more advanced languages like Windows. You know, as much as I like Mac, those systems are still Windows-based. But it is a major advantage in many, many interesting ways. Again, when we talk about merchandising, virtual fit, and so on, this is a nice proof of concept that we put on our website. It's not a real, like an e-commerce kind of website, but it does give you a very nice feel and handling of what you can do with 3D technology. So here we have a library of all kinds of garments that were created for her. But you can also see that in this area we have the different types of jeans and dresses and tops and jackets. But it can also be men or girls, and this library is growing all the time, just as a way to make you feel what it's all about. This image is rotatable in 360, it's zoomable, so you can actually get a good look and feel. It runs off a small server computer that we have put, can't remember exactly where, but sometimes it will take you time to load, but it doesn't mean that, you know, it wasn't put there so you can purchase garments, more like you can see what you can do with your content, even to the point of being able to share this information, whether through an online store or even post these images. Let's say you have dressed the avatar in a certain way, you picked up the garment that you would like, you even chose maybe a different body type and all that stuff. You can post it to your Facebook and all the social networks. It is becoming part of our lives now. So much to the extent that I was speaking at the event at the Lincoln Center just a few months ago. It was called Fashion 140. Guess what the 140 was all about? And I wasn't much prepared because I saw it's Fashion 140, you know. So, but I was invited. Let's go and speak. And the Lincoln Center was full of young, enthusiastic guys who were tweeting their lives as I was speaking. So when I came out of there, I went and searched for my name, and guess what Twitter was showing? So if you ask me if I'm now a firm believer in social media as a means to promote business, and I'll tell you the little secret why I'm much more confident in that, then yes, I am. Because it brought me a very interesting customer that I never thought I would get. So this proof of concept lives and breathes on our website to the point, as I mentioned before, of different angles, different content, and even, you know, they have a little Facebook linkage out there. What we're going to do with this from a merchandising, sales, e-commerce, however you want to slice it, in the next evolution of this thing, is to combine two worlds. We actually have two websites that, one is called 3dvirtualclothing.optitex.com, the other is called 3dvirtualavatar.optitex.com. The virtual avatar allows you to create an avatar to your measurements. The 3D clothing allows you to visualize the clothing. Well, guess what's happening next? Is marrying the two worlds and allowing you to customize not only the garment, but also the avatar, so to create what we like to call the full Monty. It's very difficult to do that, not because we say so, mainly because when I was mentioning that I was speaking on behalf of NVIDIA, the graphics card manufacturers, I'm using NVIDIA again as an example. If you want to be able to visualize heavy-duty 3D garments that are really highly detailed and that use a lot of bandwidth, you actually need a dedicated GPU graphic processor unit for pretty much every one of you that visits that website. That rules out the option of creating a cloud-based, GPU-based kind of shopping environment for this type of solutions right this moment. But it doesn't mean that things are not moving in that direction. As we work very heavily with the development teams over at NVIDIA and at Intel, we know that this thing eventually will come. And we're very, proud to be selected by them for that matter. So web visualization, again, we're going into the merchandising area. Once again, the virtual fit, while these websites and all these images were taken from a website, much like the second portion of my presentation that I'll show you, you deal with not only simple garments like tops, like on the left-hand side, but the bottom left is heavy, pleated, multi-level, multi-layers type of garment. These are all images that I grabbed off a website. A very nice visualization of what OptiTex envisioned to be the next level of e-commerce in a virtual world is this movie that I'll play in just a sec. For those of you that didn't have a chance to visit Tel Aviv, Israel, this was taken in one of the nicest places there. So consider this also as a short trip out there. And what you're going to be seeing is the same virtual avatar walking, kind of stopping in a position. You're able to select probably a different dress, a different texture, maybe a different texture and a color. Then manipulate the color, decide on what you want, and there she walks back. And that thing can live on a website, whether it's a pre-baked content or in the next evolution of which the actual user will drive the content. And it is inspiring, and it has inspired a lot of brands, a lot of retailers that we work with to get heavily invested in this whole thing called virtual prototyping. The last slide in this presentation will show you names. I'm sure that most of you work with them as your customers. We're at the stage of deploying these solutions with them. You can just imagine that later down the road it will become a language that they speak. So online presence is pretty much what the next step. These are, again, all images taken off websites, all the way from the right-hand side. It's one of the challenges, My Style Rules it's called. It's one of the challenges that I'm facing. We'll talk about that in the other portion of my presentation every Saturday morning when my wife wakes up, but I'll tell you what it's all about. So online presence, gaming and movies, that's the comment I was making before about a specific company that we work with called DAZ Studio, and they're one of the largest if not the largest marketplace on the internet for 3D content. Interestingly enough, they launched an OptiTex dynamic cloth group on Facebook, and that group generates more fans than the OptiTex site generates. They're adding 70 people to 80 people a day as friends. In their very short life, they've already surpassed the OptiTex fan group. So that's how these wonderful group of charismatic users are innovating as far as using these solutions. The idea is very simple. Up until now in that community, those of you that are familiar with the basic of computer graphics, you know, you would render a shirt with my hand. We call this subject, and this is the cloth. But you would render it regardless of where my hand was, the pleats and the wrinkles will show exactly in the same place. But in the new way, and what they really wanted to do was to say, listen, I really need the cloth to live by itself. And that was the big change that happened. Now you can go home and watch Shrek 1 and Shrek 2. That was actually where everything changed between being fully rendered to being partially rendered, and then let the cloth live by itself. And that's what's happening with the DAZ community and what they were bringing up to their users. It's a very low-end portion of the OptiTex 3D engine, but it really creates a world of difference for them. So when we mentioned just some of those that we're working with, you can find very interesting names that have changed the way that they work in the last few years. You'll recognize probably some of your customers. This is just a small list. We're missing a lot of the Perry Ellis's, Gymborees, Victoria's Secrets, and some Academy Sports, Dick's Sporting Goods, ASICS, and so many others. But some fun ones to mention is Cirque du Soleil. It was just last Saturday. If you know this artistic circus, I was just, through all the time that we work with them, just last Saturday I went to see the show Zarkana, which is their first ever like musical circus. And the next day I wrote them a nice email and I said, well, I thank you, even though I paid the ticket. Yeah, it was not given to me, but I thank you for the opportunity I had. I wrote to them to see what you're doing with technology. It's just amazing. And they're very demanding. It is considered to be one of the top high-end demanding customers we work with. Consider them to be one of the high, if you were to equalize them to a fashion company, that will be like the above the DKNYs, you know, and all the haute couture houses that we normally don't work with because they need to feel each and every sample. So the circus is going on a level and saying, you know, we're at that point, but we need to be able to be much more efficient because they're looking to double in the next 5 years. From whatever amount of shows that they have right now, they're looking to double. And it's very interesting to see. And all the way to companies like Gildan, those of you who are familiar with them, they're one of the largest, if not by now, the largest T-shirt manufacturer on this planet, and how they're using 3D solution, even on that level. And this is, you know, first portion of it. I want to take you to the other side of that presentation I was giving yesterday. And we want to talk about, again, we're continuing the direction of virtual prototyping in unique and interesting ways. We talked about the merchandising portion. We talked about what it solves for the merchandisers. We talked about the number of samples that you do for colorways. We talked about the communications, the time that passes. Mainly it's time. And yesterday we call it the deadly combination of time and money, because it is a deadly combination. At the end of the day, the more time that passes, the less seasons you can bring out there. The less seasons you can bring out there, that means less money for them. Less money for them means more pressure here on being more efficient. Everything is kind of a vicious circle, and I apologize on behalf of the US that we're the last ones to trigger this, but I hope we'll be the first one to fix it. Hope I didn't speak on behalf of our president. But Nike is one of the nice examples that we have of a company that took these solutions all the way from the patent design production, and they were using all kinds of other systems before, names that you're familiar with, names that you are familiar with. And they ran their due diligence and tried to figure out what will make sense for them as far as being able to be more effective. Now, all those methodologies, all those concepts that I heard in the last day and a half, you have no idea how these are important, or you have an idea how these are important. But I bring with me the message of how your buyers, which you know, of course, but I'm seeing it in so many buyers rather than those specifics that you work with. How much do they hope that these will actually be exercised in the way that they were presented here? And the main reason is because it means that they'll be able to get with more seasons to the market, with more of the stuff that we want to buy. If we talk about Nike ID as an example, that's something that was happening in the shoes. I can't mention where they're heading, but I can definitely tell you that the concept of being more personalized, more mass customized, more accurate means more work, means more jobs. There's always the debate whether or not you're going to invest more generates more job, or invest less generates. There's always the debate like that in the US recently, because they're trying to figure out where to go. The bottom line is, when you deploy technologies and you're doing it in a smart way, eventually the jobs will be much more effective and more interesting. Anywhere from the uniforms that they have done with the OptiTex system, very interesting project we have done for them for the Discovery Channel was a visualization of all the artwork for Lance Armstrong. And we did 2 other fun projects, which was LeBron James. If you ever wondered how he's doing his dunk when he shoots to the basket, I have it on my laptop. Can't show that, just one-on-one. But the other one was Roger Federer, back at the time when he was winning the US Masters 2 years ago. We actually motion captured his game and also dressed him up with his Night Owl suit. That's the one he was wearing when he won that. And visualize that. That's kind of where everything is pushing at their level, and it's very, very interesting. This fun website came up recently. It's called United Styles. They're trying to bring the 3D content also for kids. There's so many kids' websites, but here it actually meant that you will be able to purchase the garments. When you think about it, there is a whole world of games that was never catered for as far as being able to communicate fashion to the biggest market out there, and these are our kids. Hey, Mom, grab my sleeve. Mom, buy me this shirt I was fighting with my friend over on Xbox. Okay, that's kind of where stuff is going. So there are definitely markets to explore. We did mention this slide in the previous one. This is the one I was telling you about. What I'm experiencing on Saturday mornings when my wife wakes up and says, "What's going to look good on me?" And I'm like, "It's just morning, honey. Let me have coffee." But this website offered thousands of solutions for women, mainly in their 40s or around that age, to be able to try and visualize what's going to look good on them. And there are more of these concepts that are coming to life. There is definitely the push over web content out there. This website that visualizes heavy winter coats. Now, these are very expensive items, and it costs a lot to manufacture a sample, and it is great pain if it's not selling. It is very great pain if it's not selling. So this website said, let's reverse the process. Let's go into virtual prototyping. Let's put it on the web, and when I click on one of the images, it comes to life on the screen, rotates in 360, so I can actually see what this garment looks like from all angles, all sides, all ways. If you visit the website, you see on the right-hand side It says FW10. That's the tab you want to push because that's the one who's going to bring the content. And when you visit the website, you'll be able to really tell the quality of how the jacket, how this coat was created. Interfacing, inner linings, everything that you have in the real production. Remember the beauty of it and try to think in a bigger picture here. What if this was a way for your, not for your customers, but for your customers to generate orders that will trigger production on your side? Everything will be much more of those, you know, we're talking about cut to ship and all those ratios. What if you were able to ship whatever they want to buy? You know, it's not that I'm saying that there is a solution. It's like saying that we're going to fix all the world's problems tomorrow, and we're not. But what if you were able to improve? And it's all about innovation. It's all about improvement. It's all about, you know, being entrepreneurship in the way that you think and work. Brides.com is another nice example of 3D content that is posted online. And regardless of how many times they've changed their websites, this particular website, they've never taken this thing off. And this is using a very old version of the OptiTex 3D engine. You click on it, you select the type of body, you select the type of dress, and the whole thing rotates on the screen for you. That brought us the largest bridal customer in America. You know who they are. I don't need to mention their name as the customer. But it's interesting because this thing has been there for a few years, and it's still the most visited page on the website. We learned that off an interview that they gave to some newspaper and never told us that. We mentioned DAZ 3D and the 3D content. This is just a screenshot from the DAZ application. And the DAZ application is free if you're going to go on their website. You can create your own private, as you can tell there, Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, or maybe the combination of the two. And then visualize the garment. And this is what one of the users did on what they call dynamic clothing. And dynamic clothing, remember, it's the idea that the cloth live independently of the subject. Now, sometimes you see garments in motion. You know, I know some vendors are showing that right when you finish the draping, everything is kind of jumping and moving and so on. But ask yourself a very basic question. If that was so easy to do when you want to simulate a real piece of garment, then why Spider-Man 3 came 4 years after Spider-Man 2, not 4 months after Spider-Man 2, if it was so easy to do that? My last slide will tell you why. But you have to understand that the computer needs to calculate the new physics that now apply on the fabric in order to generate and project the wrinkle the way it should be. And unfortunately, not Steve Jobs and not his other buddies over at Intel have came up with a computer that can generate those speeds. But there are significant breakthroughs right now, especially coming in from companies like NVIDIA, where their graphics processor unit, believe it or not, can run the computer much faster than any CPU can. So if you ask me why are there CPUs and GPUs, then I'll take you back to the US and I say why there are Republicans and Democrats? Because you have to generate traffic. And they all need to fight. And that's what happens in the CPU and GPU area as well. So that was a little bit of a bracket on what's going on out there. Interestingly, one of the men's suits manufacturers out of Europe, one of the leading one, Mascon.de, they have now this website have changed, and they do it in a way that you customize your garment online. I don't know how they did this whole tie thing in there, you know. It's like to be able to simulate that level of complex stuff, but that's the merchandising portion on their end. We did speak about the OptiTex virtual portion. And I did mention before the TV show that we've done and why we've done it. It wasn't much of a sales thing for us. You can imagine how many emails and phone calls we have received. Well, I watched OptiTex and I want to get the same system. Go and explain to them how much this thing cost. I'm sorry, and that, you know, it's not the crowd, but it was more the portion of educating on behalf of all of us that garments are a product of science. The video that attaches itself to this slide shows Tim talking about the whole portion of what he has done in the show. Let's see if I can play it maybe a little later, because. But he says, you know, we took you, he's speaking to the weekly contestant, and he says, we took you to a body scan and we program all your measurements into a software called OptiTex, And then he stands with her next to a 103-inch monitor where her face was morphed to a computer, so to the computer-generated avatar, so to create a very personalized kind of shopping environment. And he explains to her, he shows her actually, let's look at different scenarios. Let's look at what's going to look good on you on a jacket, on a V-neck, in opposed to all the T-shirts she was wearing all this time. And it's very nice to see that in opposed to table pattern making, to the old ways of doing things, which he was doing in his other show called Project Runway that you've probably seen, he really felt the need to launch this whole thing on the science, technology portion through this show. And interestingly enough, just about September 2nd it was, we got a phone call from another show in New York, one of the known ones called Rachel Ray, who wants to open up a whole segment on apparel, and guess what she wants to do on her show? The same thing. We just didn't have time to work with them because we were engaged with so many other projects, but that's probably something they ask us to pick up next year. What customers say is not what they say about us. I'm not going to read any of it, of course, because I'm not a true believer in having text on PowerPoints. But basically, it's the last portion is coming from Cornell University, and you should visit their website. It's called Explore at Cornell. And that talks a lot about what universities are doing in the States with 3D technology, or the vision that they have for 3D technology, as being part of what they call pattern making 2.0. And that is now kind of a wave that goes in all the industry in making or creating more options for graduates to work. When you look at this presentation, then the next question you're asking yourself, hey, I've just graduated from NIFT maybe, or from one of the schools here in India. What if I don't want to be the best pattern maker the world has ever seen? But what if I want to take those skills and maybe apply it in one of these upcoming web e-commerce websites? They still need the same apparel because they need to stitch those garments together. What if I want to work in one of the studios here that produces content for 3D gaming or animation for one of the companies out there? What if I want to work on home sewing? I mean, one of the projects that I didn't mention here was done for Bernina, the largest sewing machine, not the largest, the largest home sewing machine company, because they deal mainly with home sewers. They've been around for 128 years, 120 years. And I went to visit my aunt in Williamsburg, Virginia one time after not seeing her for 15 years, and I see a Bernina machine, and I'm like, Auntie, what are you doing? She's 79 years old, by the way. And she said, oh, you know, I'm a home sewer. There are about 35 million home sewers around the world. I didn't know that. So I asked her, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm a home sewer. And I'm like, so? She said, look at me. I don't look like Angelina Jolie anymore. And I'm like, fine. I said, so what's the problem? And she says, you know, when I buy those patterns online, you know, I sew it together and unsew it and sew it and unsew it and stuff. And by the time I'm done, where's the fun? And I'm like, okay, so what are you missing? And she said, isn't there a way for me to see what it's going to look like? You know, at least I know if I'm making a mistake in the way that I'm sewing. And I've been doing that for the last 20-something years. So I took my pen drive, as you call it here, and I said, let me show you something. That was a product in the making at the time. And 2 years later, that's how she works. There is a product called Bernina, my label, that is not our product, it's Bernina's product, and they sell it throughout their network of 2,600 outlets around the globe, where they teach you how to measure yourself. They sell you smart patterns, which were built inside the OptiTex program. These are patterns that what we call made-to-measure garments. They know how to grow and shrink given specific people's body measurements, and you plot it into a printer, not even a plotter, and you sew it together. And the comments that you'll find on the blogs, and I love blogs, you know, you can read all the bad next to the good. No one can moderate anything. And the comments were like, this is the first time I've ever had a pair of pants that fit me. And people were saying, this is the first time I've had a t-shirt that fit me. And I'm like, what's in a t-shirt? You know, go to Old Navy, get yourself one, and get it over with. But people want a t-shirt to fit them. I can tell you from my experience, I swim ever since I remember myself. And I want to have a t-shirt that shows that I'm swimming. But couldn't find one. And I use this one as a great example of what? Virtual versus real? Maybe. But I call it a mistake. And the reason I call it a mistake is because Zorana, the Italian designer that works on this wonderful depiction of the virtual, which is on the left-hand side, for those of you who can't see it sharp, what did she forget to do? I'll answer that. She forgot to test the fabric. So what you see on the right-hand side is the real dress, of kind of a puffy material, and on the left-hand side it's also silky. So the point of the systems of this virtual prototyping is not to show you that all the logos are just, in the right place and everything looks great and, all our problems are solved and I'm getting all these orders and everything's great, but also to show the mistakes. The last portion of our presentation will focus on those mistakes and we'll show you how they communicate. When we're sleeping, they're working. That's your benefit. Enjoy it. When we're sleeping, they're working out there, and when they're sleeping, we're working. So more work in less time with much more saving. I like this shirt, that's why it's here. Nothing special about it. And a couple of fun slides. Men's, you won't recognize what it is. It's not for you. But ladies, this is all your world now. Production in the making. You can actually see the pattern papers next to the virtual garment. This is not a real bag. It's a virtual one, applied with the right properties. All the pleats, all the construction is showing in there. Just waiting for those buckles, the buckles, the zipper, and all the hardware pieces to come in and be, created as part of the final scene. Remember, I talked to you about the. I promised you something fun at the end, but I was talking about the way garments are being created in movies, and what happened when I was on the stage talking at the other time, which got me that fun customer. It's one of these two. But our team has spent 6 months over where these guys are. It's in New Zealand, by the way. It's not in the US. The guys who have created this movie that you all seen, I hope. But it's great to see the challenges that they have are kind of similar to the challenges that you have in the product development. It's interesting to see that in our world of apparel, the 3D system, and I can only testify on our behalf, that we're using is such one where you don't have the biggest problem that happens with 3D system. It's called penetration or collision, where fabric collides and it all looks like it's penetrating and it's not generating the right look and feel. It happens so much in the movies, you have no idea. But they have all these wonderful tools to smooth it all out, so when we get out of the theater, we're like, wow. So they're using such tools now that OptiTex has, and I visited a number of studios, and it's really fun to see those. This is kind of my last slide, and I kept it for last because I think that without education, which is what we've been getting here this last day and a half, we couldn't achieve what we have. This is just a small list of universities that work with us. I apologize that it's most of it, if not all of it, is a US one, because my PowerPoint is a US-based one after all. But anywhere from Cornell University that I mentioned to MIT, Brown University, and University of Minnesota, they're all using OptiTex for research purposes. The 3D portion of it is for research purposes, which is the next generation of what you do with design systems, much like the other schools are teaching it as part of their vision of what I can do to empower my graduates with more options. We just mentioned, what if I want to work in e-commerce, home sewing, game development, TV shows? What if I want to take my skills and apply them in so many other creative ways? In the US, there is a big problem of employment right now. Not necessarily they'll graduate to the plan or the direction that they had in mind before, but this kind of technology now gives the students options. And what is a school if not for the option it offers? And that's the message that OptiTex bring. We call it also, what is a vendor if not for the future technology it offers? I like to end my portion and say that that's kind of what makes OptiTex a unique type of company. When you go back to your businesses, compare your CAD vendor and ask yourself what they have done for you lately, as I like to call. Because all I can say is that we cook technologies. We have this big kitchen that only cooks technologies, and we're very proud about it because we can talk to the world with these applications. We can always make sure that, as I mentioned yesterday, we're up the hill waiting for you to catch up, and it's never going to be the other way around. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoram. This is the now present, which is knocking at our door. You see, the fit approval is probably the biggest nightmare of every merchandiser. And the maximum time in a production cycle is wasted on that. In fact, I remember a lot of buying houses, especially the Burg. They used to tell us when we were making the TNA that you should plan for at least 3 fit rejections in that. And each fit rejection means minimum, depending on the factory's efficiency, at least 10 days, 1 fit rejection. I mean, you get the comment, sometimes you wait for the pin-up sample, and then depending on your workload in your factory, and plus the cost, the courier cost. And the minimum time was given to the production people, and production people always cribbing that you look how much time these guys wasted. And you are giving us 2 weeks time or even less than that to send the shipment. So I'm sure this technology will, but only my concern is use of this technology at our end alone will not help, because we and our buyer should be on the same page. Because if they are not willing to give us approval on this, it will not be useful. But as Yoram said, most of the leading brands of US, they are already come on board. So very soon we'll have this. Another issue will be, I don't know the cost, how much the prohibitive cost or what, and how they pay back. And third issue will be the training part. As you know, most of our fit technicians, they are masters. They are semi-literate and bit stubborn. Computer skills are not that strong.
Right.
So the training support will be needed. My suggestion is either we hear the next speaker or we break for 5 minutes for the question answer here, so that, and then the second question answer for Archana.
We have one more, that's the 5-6 minutes of the actual case study that will answer 2 of your questions, and that will be presented by Parvinder and Ron Kramer, our office manager for India. And they're going to bring up a case which is very interesting because it connects the 2 worlds of the US and India, with one factory here that you're probably familiar with called Burg, and the Gloria Vanderbilt division of Jones, New York. It's an actual case that's happening as we speak, and Parvinder will be presenting some numbers. And while he's setting up, maybe I can just mention something that you were asking about, the training.
Yeah.
It's always a good question, who is the classic operator of this technology? Is it the pattern master? Is it somebody else? And in my colorful, funny way, I was bring examples. I was just going to visit Volcom, if you know them. They're one of the largest surfer companies out in the US. And I parked my car and I went in there and some kids buzzed my nose on a skateboard. And I'm like, kids. That kid was sitting in the meeting. And that kid is the operator of the 3D technology of OptiTex. So who is the classic user? Let go of the traditional stuff. Let the pattern masters do what they do best. They do patterns. And let technical designers, let whiz kids that graduate from the schools, those who are working on all these wonderful hand devices faster than I can speak, do the work of art creation.
Unfortunately, these technology students here in India, the fashion institutes, mentally they are probably not prepared to take up this as a career. Archana would be a better person to answer. She is teaching at NIFT. Because I have never seen, though I tried raising this issue when I was there to recruit, but I think it never, probably they are never, taught this could be an exciting career.